A man stands before a goddess in a hall of infinite treasure, where the ultimate prize is luck itself. The goddess of fortune, with a wicked grin, offers the human a tempting wager. A system window reveals his status, a staggering negative 999 luck, branding him as eternally unfortunate. She lays out the rules of her game, 99 fortunes against a single devastating calamity. With a grand gesture, she dares him to defy his fate and take a chance. He reflects on his cursed existence, convinced his bad luck began before he even took his first breath. His birth was a catastrophe, marked by an ambulance crashing directly into the delivery room. Even as a newborn, his cries seemed to herald a life of pure misfortune. This curse followed him through school, causing him to fall ill before every important exam. For 2 decades straight, every fortune he's ever drawn has predicted nothing but great disaster. His curse even ruined vacations and field trips, summoning storms that drenched everyone. This earned him the nickname God of Pestilence, a reputation that followed him even after dungeons appeared. Despite becoming a hunter, he was stuck at the bottom as a lowly F rank, still plagued by misfortune. He's stopped by his party leader, a man named Seiji, who has something to discuss. The C-rank hunter smugly informs him that the group's shared fund contribution is about to double. Fuku is shocked by the sudden demand, knowing he doesn't have the money. Seiji's expression turns menacing as he pressures him, questioning his ability to pay up. He cruelly reminds Fuku that this is the price for any group willing to tolerate a god of pestilence. With trembling hands, Fuku reluctantly pulls out his meager earnings from his wallet. He's forced to hand over the cash, which Seiji snatches with a look of smug satisfaction. Fuku hesitantly approaches Seiji, hoping to join the day's hunt. But Seiji coldly informs him that his only job is to provide the funds, leaving him behind. Stunned into silence, Fuku can only watch as his party abandons him. He walks away, a lonely figure, while the others mockingly call his extortion a group fund. In reality, it's just a cruel tax the party imposes on him for his bad luck. Seiji justifies his cruelty, claiming he's giving a role to an otherwise useless member. As if on cue, the sky opens up, drenching the already miserable Fuku in rain. He runs through the downpour, contemplating how luck has defined his entire existence. Back home, he prays at a shrine for his parents, believing his fate was sealed from the very beginning. In a final act of misfortune, the candle on the altar suddenly extinguishes itself. He kneels before a vision of fiery destruction, realizing his bad luck is something far more sinister. With a look of utter despair, he concludes that his entire life has been defined by a curse. Determined despite the storm, he runs towards the Dungeon Hunters Guild headquarters. At the reception desk, the clerk already knows the answer to whether he's hunting alone today. Nearby hunters whisper and point, spreading the rumor that his presence is a death sentence. He ignores the stares and signs the waiver, accustomed to the fearful glares of others. His infamous title, the God of Pestilence, echoes in the minds of everyone who sees him. As if to prove their point, lightning strikes as he approaches the gate to the Goblin Cave. Without a party or a single ally, he steps alone into the menacing dungeon portal. Nearby, a stark warning sign forbids entry and any mineral extraction in the area. 2 guild workers finish their checks, preparing to seal the dungeon entrance for safety. They confirm no one is inside, certain no hunter would be foolish enough to enter during the annual Goblin Festival. Unaware of Fuku's presence, they activate the lockdown, sealing the gate and trapping him inside. Deep within the cavern, Fuku ventures forward, the only sound being the dripping of water. He suddenly halts, a gut feeling telling him that something is terribly wrong. Ignoring his instincts, he begins mining, puzzled by the unusual silence of the cave. He tries to brush off his unease, confident he can handle any goblins that might appear. With a false sense of security, he convinces himself that this solo mission is perfectly manageable. But from the shadows, a sea of glowing eyes emerges as the ground begins to shake violently. His confidence shatters as he turns to face an overwhelming and terrifying presence. He is confronted by an entire army of goblins, far more than he ever expected. Fuku is utterly stunned, realizing he's walked into the middle of the dreaded Goblin Festival. Without a second thought, he bolts in the opposite direction, fleeing from the overwhelming swarm. As he runs, he catches a glimpse of a familiar figure observing him from a cliff above. The goddess of fortune watches with a malicious grin, clearly enjoying the spectacle of his misfortune. A goblin lunges forward, its claws tearing into his backpack and halting his escape. He loses his balance and his precious gear as the bag is ripped from his shoulders. Annoyed but focused on survival, he abandons his equipment and continues his desperate flight. He makes a desperate leap across a wide chasm, putting distance between himself and the monsters. His relief is short-lived as he finds himself stranded on a crumbling ledge with nowhere else to go. Trapped on the ledge, he turns to face the approaching goblin horde, his heart pounding. With no other options, he resolves to fight, drawing his sword for a final stand. But his curse strikes again, and his only weapon shatters in his hand at the worst possible moment. The goblins cackle with glee, seeing their prey now completely defenseless. Surrounded and armed with nothing but a broken hilt, Fuku stares down his impending doom. With his back to the chasm, he faces the monstrous army, ready for the end. The ground gives way beneath him, and the crumbling ledge sends him plunging into the darkness. He falls helplessly into a swirling crimson abyss, his life flashing before his eyes. Fuku awakens to find himself alive, his head resting in the lap of a mysterious horned woman. The enigmatic figure greets him with a dazzling and slightly mischievous smile. Fuku stares up in utter confusion, trying to process his impossible survival. The mysterious woman muses that for him to have reached her, he must possess an incredible amount of luck. With a wild grin, she presents a chilling alternative. Perhaps he's the unluckiest man in history. He scrambles back, demanding to know who she is and what she means by her cryptic words. She strikes a playful pose, clearly enjoying his bewilderment before her grand reveal. With a flourish, she declares herself to be none other than the god of luck. She snaps her fingers, unleashing a wave of golden, reality-bending power. In an instant, the dark cavern transforms into a magnificent hall overflowing with treasure chests. Fuku can only gape in disbelief, struggling to comprehend her title as the god of luck. Turning her back, she taunts him, questioning his own perception of having good luck. The god of luck presents a wall of chests, offering 99 fortunes and a single hidden calamity. With Fuku reflected in her gaze, she suggests that a single lucky break could improve his miserable existence. She then warns him that passing up this opportunity will have dire consequences. He trembles, the thought of picking the one chest containing calamity consuming him with fear. She leaps forward with a wild expression, impatiently urging him to participate in her game. Fuku is paralyzed by fear, understanding that his entire future is now a high-stakes game of chance. She flashes a sharp-toothed smile, condescendingly telling the lucky adventurer to stop being scared. She clarifies that reaching the heart of her domain automatically earns him the right to claim a special reward. With a dismissive air, she declares that just giving him the reward would be no fun at all. With a flick of her wrist, she proposes a bet worthy of her divine title. She casually dismisses the danger, pointing out the calamity is just one chest out of 100. The god taunts him, saying that someone with even average luck would have nothing to fear. But Fuku knows better, his face contorting in pure anguish at the impossible odds. From her throne of gold, she commands him to step forward and finally put his luck to the test. She then reveals the cruel catch. Refusing to play means being trapped in her domain for eternity. Fuku trembles, his mind racing back through a lifetime defined by one constant truth. He accepts that from the day he was born, he has never once experienced a single moment of good luck. With this grim certainty, he reaches for a chest, knowing exactly what to expect in a situation like this. The god of luck watches with a deranged smile, her eyes gleaming with anticipation for the inevitable disaster. A wave of dark energy erupts as Fuku screams in horror, having chosen the one and only calamity. Just as he predicted, his hand lands on the single chest containing pure calamity. A violent torrent of purple energy erupts from the chest, signifying his bad luck has been unleashed. He cries out in agony as the dark power violently surges through his body. The god of luck watches with amusement, finding his predictable misfortune incredibly entertaining. He collapses to the floor as a strange digital interface begins to materialize around him. The system window flashes a warning, showing one of his stats plummeting to an impossible negative value. The system confirms the change, granting him a new and ominous skill called Great Inversion. She crouches down, mockingly lamenting his unfortunate situation with a bored expression. She gleefully explains the calamity's effect, a skill that reverses all the power he's ever gained. He trembles on the ground, utterly confused as he feels the bizarre effects of the inversion taking hold of his body. The system confirms his luck stat has bottomed out at an impossible negative number. She offers him a sliver of hope, suggesting that if he worships her, she might reconsider his fate. He stares back in disbelief, but even the god of luck seems caught off guard by what's happening. Suddenly, a massive torrent of brilliant blue energy erupts from the floor, engulfing the entire hall. The god of luck herself is swept up in the chaotic flood, her smug demeanor replaced with genuine shock. Losing all composure, she panics as the unexpected deluge throws her about. The powerful current drags her down into a swirling vortex, completely out of her control. Meanwhile, Fuku feels a strange warmth spreading through him, mistaking the magical flood for a hot spring. As he begins to sink beneath the surface, he feels himself losing consciousness, accepting his end. His final thought materializes before him, branding him a loser as he fades into the depths. Fuku washes up on the shore of a dark, unfamiliar cavern, the magical flood having receded. He sits up, exhausted but relieved to be alive, still processing the impossible events. Before he can relax, a monstrous green foot steps into view, signaling a new threat. He turns in alarm to find himself completely surrounded by a horde of menacing goblins. A wave of dread washes over him as he recalls that something was wrong with the goblins he'd met earlier. His attention is drawn to a large, imposing figure standing at the head of the goblin army. He stares in shock, identifying the leader as the formidable Goblin Queen. His eyes lock onto a glowing boss emblem hanging from her neck, a clear sign of her power. Fuku recalls a chilling rumor about an annual goblin hunt to select a mate for their queen. He realizes with dawning horror that he has stumbled into the middle of that very ritual, cursing his abysmal luck. The Goblin Queen raises her emblem, signaling the official start of the ritual hunt. The entire goblin horde charges forward, forcing Fuku to turn and flee for his life. His desperate escape is cut short as he trips and crashes hard onto the rocky ground. Refusing to die, his hand instinctively closes around a small, sharp stone. He hurls the rock with all his remaining strength, determined not to go down without a fight. The tiny projectile harmlessly bounces off a goblin's head, a completely futile gesture. Fuku sits in stunned silence, realizing his pathetic attempt at defense has failed. But then, a few pebbles unexpectedly begin to fall from the cavern's ceiling. A massive glowing crack suddenly splinters across the rock face above the horde. The goblins look up in confusion as Fuku's terrible luck triggers a catastrophic cave-in. A giant glowing boulder slams down, instantly flattening one of the unfortunate goblins. He stares in shock at the aftermath, the goblin's leg twitching beneath the immense rock. The entire goblin army freezes, their glowing eyes fixed on the unexpected disaster. He looks up in panic, shouting in alarm as the cavern begins to crumble around them. Even the imposing Goblin Queen shows a flicker of concern, her composure finally breaking. The collapse intensifies as sharp stalactites and boulders rain down upon the panicked horde. Fuku can only watch in disbelief as his terrible luck inadvertently decimates the goblin army. A stray pebble bounces harmlessly off the Goblin Queen's head, who remains surprisingly unfazed by the chaos. When the dust settles, all that remains of the mighty goblin army is a pile of rubble and fallen warriors. Fuku finds himself face to face with the Goblin Queen, the sole survivor of his accidental onslaught. Fuku braces himself, assuming the Goblin Queen is furious about her fallen army. The queen makes a strange, whimpering sound, completely baffling him. She turns away with trembling shoulders, leaving Fuku utterly perplexed by her reaction. Instead of rage, the queen turns back with hearts in her eyes, suddenly infatuated with him. A system window declares Fuku the official winner of the Goblin Queen's mate selection ritual. The massive queen looms over Fuku, who recoils in terror from her unexpected affection. She begins to chase him with amorous intent, forcing him to flee for his life once again. He screams in despair, convinced his abysmal luck has cursed him with this terrifying fate. As he runs, the legs of the still-drowned god of luck are visible in a nearby pool of water. Having somehow escaped, Fuku finds himself holding the Goblin Queen's glowing boss emblem. Fuku stares at the ominous emblem, completely unsure of what to do with his bizarre prize. He recalls a smug teammate's lecture about sharing items, a bitter memory of being exploited. The memory leaves him feeling dejected, reminding him of his past helplessness. Walking through the city, he can't shake the feeling that the emblem is just another cursed item. He reflects on his old belief that luck was a fixed fate determined from birth. But a new understanding begins to dawn on him as he walks forward with purpose. The Goblin Queen's emblem suddenly surges with an immense crackling blue energy. This power leads him to a new dungeon where he stands before a colossal minotaur boss. With a newfound determination, he finally understands the true nature of his so-called luck. He realizes his abysmal luck is actually a phenomenal power capable of changing his entire world. Fuku walks through the city, convinced the emblem is a curse, unaware that a mysterious woman has noticed him. Her eyes follow him, her expression showing she recognized the powerful item he carries. The memory of his old party resurfaces, showing them demanding money and dismissing his contribution as a worthless trinket. He recalls his despair, having lost everything in a dungeon except for a single, seemingly useless item. His muscular teammate had grabbed him in a rage, furious at the lack of profit. The blonde teammate had accused him of betrayal, holding up her own valuable loot as a comparison. Meanwhile, their smug leader coolly appraised the party's valuable haul, ignoring Fuku's plight. The leader had then stepped in, feigning sympathy while confirming he had analyzed Fuku's find. With a condescending smile, he had declared the item completely valueless to the entire party. Fuku remembers holding the rejected emblem, unable to believe they were simply casting it aside. The leader cheerfully agrees to take the worthless item off Fuku's hands. His friendly mask drops, revealing a sinister glare as he demands the emblem. Suddenly, the mysterious woman from before grabs Fuku's arm, stopping the transaction. Fuku stares in utter shock, completely bewildered by her sudden intervention. She gives him a sharp, reassuring look before turning her attention back to his old party. The party leader is stunned into silence, his smug confidence instantly evaporating. The woman calls out the leader's lie, questioning his claim that the item was analyzed and had no value. She stands protectively in front of Fuku, prompting the furious leader to demand who she is. She introduces herself as Ayasi Aoi, an A-class analyst, and accuses them of attempted fraud. Fuku is left speechless, struggling to comprehend that a top-tier analyst just saved him. The accusation of fraud draws the attention of everyone in the crowded cafe, putting the party on the spot. The leader desperately tries to save face, claiming it was just a friendly and legitimate transfer between teammates. Ayasi scoffs at his excuse, questioning if such favors apply to legendary items worth an entire mansion. Fuku is left utterly speechless, the true value of his cursed item finally hitting him. The onlookers gasp in shock, realizing they just witnessed an attempt to scam a man out of a legendary treasure. The other party members cringe under the weight of the crowd's scornful glares. Ayasi lays out the facts, stating that deceiving someone about an item's worth is blatant fraud. She points directly at the leader, publicly shaming him for his despicable actions. The muscular teammate starts to panic, looking to his now cornered leader for a way out. Fuku, overwhelmed by the revelation, can only wonder if this incredible turn of events is real. The humiliated party leader scoffs and turns to leave, his teammates following suit. He shoots a hateful glare over his shoulder, silently promising that Ayasi will regret crossing him. Ayasi, still visibly angry, pulls a bewildered Fuku away from the scene. Fuku nervously tries to get the attention of his fuming savior. She turns and apologizes, admitting she couldn't stand by and watch the injustice. Fuku, suddenly flustered, points out that she's still holding his hand. Ayasi flinches in surprise, her face flushing bright red with embarrassment. He bows repeatedly in apology as she comically collapses from the awkwardness. Once they've recovered, Fuku questions if the emblem could really be a legendary item. He holds up the cursed-looking trinket, convinced it's impossible for him to possess anything of value. Ayasi passionately refutes his self-deprecating claim, her expression fierce. She presents her state-issued A-class license, proving her analysis is legitimate and trustworthy. Ayasi declares the item is a tribe chief's proof, an S-class treasure of immense rarity. The onlookers from the cafe now mob Fuku, desperate to know how he acquired such a legendary prize. They praise his incredible luck, a concept Fuku struggles to accept after a lifetime of misfortune. He flashes back to the emblem, its cursed purple aura reinforcing his belief that it can't be a good thing. In his memory, the emblem mysteriously appears chained to his ankle, glowing with an ominous light. The item's power suddenly erupts, yanking him into the air as the crowd below screams in terror. Elsewhere, the disgraced party leader furiously kicks a trash can, venting his frustration. He seethes with rage, unable to forget the public humiliation he suffered at Ayasi's hands. Seiji clutches his head, consumed by an uncontrollable rage over his humiliation. His two teammates approach him cautiously, concerned by his violent outburst. A sinister smile spreads across his face as a dark idea for revenge takes root. His expression twists with malice as he proposes a vile and cruel plan to get back at Ayasi. He further suggests they involve others in their scheme, seeing an opportunity for profit. The leader laughs maniacally, trying to convince his hesitant teammates with his twisted logic. Their plotting is suddenly interrupted by a loud, unexpected sound from the nearby woods. A massive cloud of red dust erupts from the trees, signaling a powerful impact. Menacing, monstrous silhouettes begin to emerge from the settling dust cloud. A horde of snarling goblins appears before them, their eyes glowing with violent intent. The party screams in terror, their revenge plot completely forgotten in the face of the goblin horde. Seiji is immediately swarmed, his body grabbed by dozens of sharp-clawed green hands. The entire party is quickly overwhelmed and buried under a pile of monsters, questioning how goblins could be outside a dungeon. Elsewhere, an emergency broadcast blares across the city, announcing a monster outbreak and ordering immediate evacuation. A panicked police officer directs the evacuation, wondering if the dungeons have overflowed. He receives a grim report that adventurers are also being abducted from within the dungeons. Seiji is carried away by the goblin mob, desperately struggling against their grip. The goblins drag him through the city, chattering about using him to ensure their tribe's prosperity. His unconscious teammates are also carried off, all three of them now helpless captives. The goblins drag their prisoners deep into a dark, cavernous lair, their sinister purpose still a mystery. Seiji lets out a silent scream, his eyes wide with absolute horror. The goblin horde closes in, their leering faces revealing their sinister intentions for their new prize. One of the creatures yanks him forward, his pleas for mercy completely ignored. He's unceremoniously thrown into a deep pit, a sacrifice to the monstrous crowd below. Seiji lands amidst the goblins, his body quickly disappearing under a pile of green monsters. He struggles futilely as countless hands pin him down, his last hope for escape extinguished. Meanwhile, Fuku examines the legendary emblem, pondering the strange flash of light it just produced. He and Ayasi remain the center of attention, the crowd unaware of the citywide chaos unfolding. A well-dressed woman suddenly barges in, urgently calling out Fuku's name. Fuku turns around completely baffled by the unexpected arrival. The woman is revealed to be a horned girl, dramatically bursting through the doors while catching her breath. Fuku stares in disbelief, trying to recall where he's seen this strange girl before. The girl points a trembling finger at Fuku, furiously demanding he return her stolen skill. A system window flashes, revealing the name of the skill in question, the overpowered Grand Reversal. Fuku and Ayasi are left completely speechless and confused by the bizarre accusation. The story flashes back 30 years to the discovery of a modern-day gold vein. This gold vein was actually a massive dungeon tower, the Dan Gaon that appeared in the city. From this dungeon, miners unearthed countless unknown items by breaking apart mysterious crystals. These miraculous items were revered by the public and called blessings from the gods. The flashback reveals that the entity governing this dungeon is a literal god who looks just like the horned girl. The horned girl furiously shakes Fuku, demanding the immediate return of her skill. Fuku stumbles backward, completely overwhelmed by her sudden and violent accusation. The cafe patrons stare at the commotion, one onlooker remarking on the girl's childlike appearance. Others dismiss her as a mere cosplayer, pointing out her horns and dramatic attire. Ayasi quickly intervenes, trying to pull the furious girl away from a terrified Fuku. The chaotic scene is comically illustrated, with Ayasi struggling to placate the raging girl as Fuku trembles nearby. Ayasi attempts a gentler approach, calmly telling the girl that it's not safe for a child to be alone. The girl's fury reignites as she slaps Ayasi's hand away, offended at being called a child. She angrily pokes Ayasi's cheek, making the shocking declaration that she is, in fact, a god. The entire cafe is stunned into silence, the crowd realizing they are witnessing a god who has just emerged from the dungeon. Ayasi stares in utter disbelief, connecting the dots that this girl is the god who manages the dungeon. The girl strikes a pose, proudly introducing herself as Alayar, the god of luck and giver of blessings. She sharply points a finger, demanding the onlookers show proper respect for her divine presence. A bystander questions her intentions, reminding everyone she wanted something returned. Alayar's demeanor suddenly shifts to shy and flustered as she claims Fuku stole something precious from her. A dramatic visual represents the theft, leaving Ayasi stunned by the serious accusation. Fuku vehemently denies the theft, insisting the skill was actually forced on him against his will. He pauses, a look of dawning realization on his face as he figures out what she must be referring to. Fuku addresses the crowd, guessing she means the cursed skill disaster, also known as Grand Reversal. Alir's eyes light up with excitement as she confirms his guess and once again demands he give it back. Ayasi is stunned, finally connecting the name Grand Reversal to Fuku's cursed skill. Fuku tries to reason with the god, explaining the impossibility of returning a skill he never wanted. Growing impatient, Alir flashes a wicked grin, deciding to resolve the situation her own way. With a snap of her glowing fingers, she begins to cast a powerful spell. The cafe is engulfed in a brilliant flash as Alir unleashes her divine gamble ability on them. Fuku stares in horror, completely unprepared for the divine being's sudden assault. Ayasi is overwhelmed by the blinding light, bracing herself against the immense power. In an instant, the cafe vanishes, replaced by a surreal, ethereal realm under a golden sky. Ayasi looks around in confusion, trying to comprehend their sudden change in location. Fuku sees Alir floating majestically above, who then reveals she is the god governing luck and gambling. Alir reveals her divine gamble can turn anything into a wager from skills to stats. Fuku looks on in absolute dread, realizing the terrifying scope of her power. Ayasi listens as the god lists wealth, status, and even relationships as potential stakes. With a crazed grin, Alir holds a glowing die, declaring that even life itself is on the table. She points menacingly, demanding he return her grand reversal skill through this forced gamble. Before Fuku can react, a mysterious purple cube begins to phase directly into his forehead. He cries out in agony as the divine object forcibly merges with his being. The scene abruptly cuts to a time skip, jumping forward 2 hours. Fuku and Ayasi find themselves on a surreal shore, with a tiny Alir floating in the water holding a "Don't Look" sign. The now clothesless god comically rages, demanding to know why they are ignoring her. Fuku and Ayasi awkwardly try to console the defeated god, who has suffered 100 consecutive losses. Alir collapses in despair, having gambled away everything she owned in the divine game. A flustered Fuku offers to return the dungeon management rights he just won from her. The god furiously rejects his pity, demanding one more round with a gambler's desperate logic. Ayasi observes the scene, finding Fuku's overwhelming victory in a simple dice game highly suspicious. She initially suspects his grand reversal skill is the cause of this impossible luck. However, she quickly deduces that can't be right, as a god of luck wouldn't need to gamble to get it back. With a new theory in mind, Ayasi asks Fuku if she can inspect his stats. A bewildered Fuku agrees, still processing the surreal events of the past 2 hours. Ayasi takes his hand, preparing to examine his status window for the truth. Ayasi activates her Identify skill, engulfing them both in a storm of digital information. She focuses intently, channeling her power to analyze every detail of Fuku's status. Fuku, however, is completely bewildered by the experience, unable to see the data himself. With a confident smile, Ayasi eagerly prepares to read the results of her scan. Her confidence instantly shatters as her eyes widen in utter disbelief at what she sees. She stares at his status window, completely floored by the information displayed before her. A worried Fuku asks what's wrong, but Ayasi frantically points to one specific detail, his luck stat. He looks down in confusion, remembering his lifelong reputation for being incredibly unlucky. He immediately starts apologizing, assuming his luck is so abysmal it's a curse on everyone around him. But Ayasi frantically corrects him, revealing his luck stat isn't low, it's astronomically, impossibly high. Fuku scoffs at the idea, insisting his entire life has been a string of misfortunes. A painful memory surfaces of being ostracized as a child, blamed for a disaster he alone survived. He recalls another incident, staring at the wreckage of a building that was a total loss. His only relief was that the destruction narrowly missed his own home. The flashback continues, showing him involved with a group of delinquents at a bar. He remembers their leader's smug face, knowing they were all trapped by fear. A younger Fuku is greeted by the group, who immediately ask him about money. He forces a pained, awkward smile, clearly uncomfortable in the situation. Back in the present, Fuku falls silent, the weight of his past experiences sinking in. He suddenly breaks into a strained grin, convinced this newfound luck is just a setup for an even bigger catastrophe. Ayasi listens intently, her expression hardening as she processes his fatalistic view. He comically recalls his history of misfortune, averaging 9 major accidents per year. Even the god of luck is horrified, realizing someone could possess a luck stat so catastrophically low. Alir finally connects the dots, understanding grand reversal is a skill that completely flips a stat. Fuku feels slightly insulted by the implication his luck was trained to its lowest point. Ayasi confirms that his abysmal luck was inverted, creating his current god-tier stat, which infuriates Alir. The defeated god desperately pleads for her clothes back, while a flustered Fuku begs her to put them on. A tiny, cheerful Alir flies off, celebrating the return of her divine garments. Now fully dressed, Alir's demeanor shifts back to that of a serious, powerful being. She declares it's a miracle he's even alive, given his naturally cursed existence. Alir explains that with luck as abysmal as his, a normal person would have perished long ago. Fuku wonders if his sheer survival through constant misfortune was, paradoxically, a form of luck. The god of luck strikes a dramatic pose, preparing to shift the scene back to reality. With a shattering effect, the surreal shoreline gives way to the familiar dungeon interior. Back in the main hall, Ayasi begins to address the matter of Alir's grand reversal skill. She declares that ownership of the powerful skill now belongs to a very startled Fuku. Suddenly, a nearby door is violently thrown open, revealing a battered figure stumbling through. A disheveled man staggers down the hall towards the group, clearly in a state of distress. His face is a mask of pure rage as he glares at them, vowing revenge for his condition. Fuku stares in shock, recognizing the enraged man as Seiji, the delinquent leader from his past. Seiji furiously accuses Fuku of using a clan chief emblem to cause his current disfigured state. Fuku recalls the moment the emblem was activated, finally connecting the dots to Seiji's accusation. The delinquent leader draws a vicious blade, sneering that a god of misfortune should have been honored by its use. Seiji rages that Fuku's only purpose was to be a power source, and now he's paying the price for his defiance. He activates his knife-throwing skill, preparing to launch a deadly projectile at Fuku. As the knife hurtles towards them, Ayasi yells a warning to an unprepared Fuku. Fuku panics, but Ayasi remains surprisingly calm, realizing the foolishness of directing ill will at them. With a look of utter disdain, she deems the entire attack to be a stupid, pointless gesture. The blade, crackling with dark energy, closes in as Seiji screams for their demise. In a split-second reaction, Fuku shoves Ayasi out of the knife's direct path. The knife misses its target, instead ricocheting to slice through the chain of a massive chandelier. As the blade embeds itself in the floor, the heavy fixture begins its descent right above Seiji. The delinquent leader looks up in bewildered terror, frozen by his impending doom. With a deafening crash, the enormous chandelier smashes down, completely engulfing the attacker. Fuku, Ayase, and Alir can only stare, stunned by the impossibly convenient accident. Other adventurers in the hall cry out in shock and confusion at the sudden destruction. The god of luck calmly instructs Fuku to pay close attention to the outcome of the attack. Fuku's face twists in horrified realization as he finally begins to understand. Alir reveals that the chaotic scene is a perfect demonstration of his newfound power of luck. She explains the core principle. Bad luck attracts misfortune while actively repelling anything good. Alir illustrates how good luck works, attracting positive outcomes while actively repelling anything negative. She clarifies that any ill will directed at such overwhelming luck is immediately rejected and cast aside. That rejected malice, now aimless, inevitably returns to its original sender. The god of luck concludes her lesson, only to become annoyed that her words are being ignored. Instead of listening, Fuku is completely zoned out, reminiscing about a flock of bluebirds. Alir smirks, branding him a deranged luck monster who could accidentally discover oil or buried gold. Fuku recalls the moment he activated the emblem, a new understanding dawning on his face. Ayasi examines his status screen, confirming her suspicion that this is all an effect of the grand reversal skill. Alir begrudgingly confirms this, furiously reminding Fuku to take good care of the powerful skill he now possesses. Fuku silently gazes at his own status screen, contemplating the immense power now at his fingertips. Fuku admits he's still struggling to accept his new reality, as Alir turns away impatiently. Overwhelmed with emotion, he sheds tears of gratitude for this incredible turn of events. A small bluebird, a symbol of good fortune, lands directly on the surprised god of luck's head. A flustered Alir tries to regain her composure, declaring her gift a divine blessing to be treasured. Meanwhile, Ayasi nervously activates a communication device that begins to glow with an intense blue light. She answers a call from the guild, confused when they ask for Alir, who is standing right there. The god of luck erupts into a boisterous laugh, thoroughly enjoying the chaos she has created. She dramatically poses over Fuku, triumphantly declaring him her newest and most prized follower. Just as Alir tries to recruit him into her cult, Ayasi grabs her from behind with a menacing look. Ayasi's dark aura flares as she informs the struggling god that the guild has sent a notice about her numerous gambling complaints. Held firmly by Ayasi, Alir tries to play innocent regarding the guild's accusations. Ayasi drags the struggling god across the floor, accusing her of forcing a disastrous skill onto other adventurers. She reveals that Alier held adventurers' skills hostage, demanding they join her cult to get them back. Ayasi furiously shakes the god, appalled that she would call such coercive recruitment a blessing. Alier weakly defends her actions as promoting independence, but Ayasi immediately identifies it as a blatant threat. Now sulking on the ground, the disgraced god mutters that there's a deeper reasoning behind her desperate methods. She claims to have unavoidable circumstances, leaving Fuku concerned and Ayasi highly skeptical. The scene shifts to an explanation, revealing that a god's rank is directly tied to their number of followers. Dressed as a professor, Alier uses a chart to show her lowly, almost god status, explaining that losing followers means losing her divinity. Fuku zones out, picturing the god as a doctor, completely missing her lecture until she snaps him out of it. Alier chews a handkerchief in frustration, revealing her divine rank is a dismal 72, second from the very bottom. When Ayasi questions the consequences of losing divinity, the god completely loses her composure. The flustered god admits the consequences are so dire, she can't even bring herself to say them aloud. Unable to continue, the dejected god turns and walks away, leaving Fuku and Ayasi to ponder her fate. Fuku suddenly realizes the horrifying implication, wondering if losing divinity means she'll simply disappear. Panicked by this thought, both Fuku and Ayasi rush to catch the god as she suddenly collapses. Fuku desperately holds on to the god, pleading for her not to disappear and promising to help everyone understand her situation. As Fuku continues his heartfelt plea, Alier looks up with a surprisingly smug and mischievous grin. She internally laments that their sympathy has ruined her dramatic moment, forcing her to start her recruitment from scratch. Fired up, Fuku and Ayasi resolve to use their own strength and connections to restore the god's prestige. The newly formed team sets off, walking down a path as blue birds, symbols of luck, observe them. They arrive at their destination, a massive and foreboding dungeon entrance that towers over them. Ayasi excitedly reveals their target is the A-rank Great Iron Labyrinth, a brutal dungeon that has never been cleared. He's horrified by the 30% survival rate and the rule requiring a C-rank escort, a stark reminder of his own F-rank status. Brushing off his worry, Ayasi confidently flashes an OK sign, announcing she has a B-rank license. The reality of entering a high-level dungeon sinks in, leaving Fuku visibly anxious. He realizes that without his friends, he'd be forced to rely on shady recruiters and greedy mercenaries to even get started. His dark reverie is broken as he's jolted back to reality by someone calling his name. With a bright smile, Ayasi extends her hand to him, while a confused Alier questions his hesitation. Visibly moved by her encouragement, Fuku looks up with a blush and a spark of determination in his eyes. Filled with new resolve, Fuku takes her hand and follows her up the dungeon steps. Unbeknownst to them, two suspicious figures watch their every move from a hidden vantage point. One of the men keeps a close eye on the group as they venture deeper, their reflection in his goggles. Fuku is overwhelmed by the dungeon's scale, doubting if this unconquered labyrinth can ever be beaten. The god of luck scoffs at his hesitation, questioning his basic understanding of dungeons. She reveals dungeons are divine trials, meant to restore faith in humanity with powerful blessings. Ayasi confirms this theory explains Japan's high dungeon count, as Alier fumes about the faithless masses. Holding a magical lantern, Ayasi warns them to be careful, as they're now in an unexplored area full of active traps. She then smirks at Fuku, realizing his incredible luck will likely keep them safe from any hidden dangers. Alier, however, gives a stern warning about opening treasure chests, hinting that some things require more than just luck. A sudden, terrified scream from Fuku shatters the dungeon's silence, reacting to Alier's predicament. He and Ayasi immediately bolt towards the commotion, their faces etched with panic. They find the god ensnared by slimy tentacles, crying for help after foolishly approaching a treasure chest. The chest reveals its true identity. A danger level, a mimic. A monster notorious for devouring adventurers. Ayasi urgently explains to a horrified Fuku that the creature's digestive juices leave nothing behind. She grabs a tentacle wrapped around her lantern, preparing to fight back, but finds it surprisingly strong. The mimic suddenly yanks Ayasi off her feet, pulling her helplessly through the air as Fuku watches in shock. Now she too is caught in the monster's slimy grasp, struggling against its constricting appendages. With both his companions captured, Alier desperately calls out to Fuku, their last hope for rescue. The monster begins to force a tentacle into the helpless god's mouth, making its deadly intentions clear. Overcoming his fear, Fuku draws his blade, which crackles with a mysterious purple energy. He lunges forward with a desperate cry, bringing his sword down on the writhing mass of tentacles. His attack connects, but instead of cutting the monster, he sends the entire mimic flying across the room. The heavy chest slams into the ground with incredible force, stunning the creature. The mimic's form contorts in agony, its tentacles thrashing wildly before it's defeated. Its appendages dissolve into thin air, leaving only a faint magical residue behind. Fuku quickly runs to his freed companions, checking to see if they're unharmed. A blushing Ayasi thanks him for the save, while Alayar lies on the floor, overwhelmed with relief. The delayed shock hits Fuku, who recoils in terror as the god clings to him for comfort. He suddenly stops, looking at his hands with a puzzled expression, sensing something is different. He peers into the defeated mimic's chest, noticing a strange sparkle from within. A close-up reveals an ornate golden key, the monster's final drop. Fuku picks up the mysterious key, showing it to a curious Alayar. The shadowy figures from before emerge with their crew, confirming their suspicions were correct. Startled by their sudden appearance, Fuku whirls around and demands to know who they are. The leader grabs Ayasi, holding her hostage and demanding they hand over the loot. A terrified Ayasi struggles against her captor, desperately calling out to Fuku for help. Fuku's anger manifests as a crackling blue energy that surges around his fist. He stares at his hand in disbelief, questioning if this is the true power of his luck. Realizing what this power means, he focuses the intense energy, ready to fight back. He hesitates, realizing his raw power could harm Ayasi if he's not careful. A grim vision flashes through his mind, showing the dire consequences of a reckless attack. His energy erupts, shattering the floor, and sending the entire group of thugs falling into a newly formed chasm. Fuku screams in horror, realizing his attack has also sent Ayasi plummeting with them. He lunges forward, managing to grab her hand just in the nick of time. Straining with all his might, he desperately tries to pull her back to safety. He refuses to let go, his grip tightening as he holds on for dear life. A terrified Ayasi looks up at her savior, her hope resting entirely on him. Alayar watches in terror, realizing their combined weight is now pulling Fuku down too. The god immediately slides forward, rushing to provide support before they both fall. Despite the god's intervention, their combined weight proves too much, pulling them all into the chasm. The trio plummets into the darkness below, their desperate cries echoing in the newly formed abyss. Ayasi is the first to stir, waking up dazed and surrounded by the rubble from their long fall. She frantically searches for her companions, her relief visible when she spots Alayar in the distance. Her search for Fuku ends abruptly, as she realizes she landed directly on top of him. A deep blush spreads across her face as she processes their incredibly awkward and compromising position. Alayar, ever the pragmatist, dusts herself off and immediately begins to assess their dire situation. She checks for injuries, though Fuku seems more overwhelmed by embarrassment than the actual impact. The god gazes up the impossibly high walls, confirming their escape route is completely gone. A new, chilling thought occurs to them as they wonder about the fate of the thugs who fell with them. Ayasi reveals she's already tended to the unconscious thugs who were scattered among the rubble. Fuku laments being attacked by fellow adventurers, a betrayal worse than any monster. His companions lean in close, teasingly asking if the treasure was worth all this trouble. He presents the golden key, which Alayar dismisses as hardly looking like a grand prize. Ayasi, however, imagines the key unlocking a room overflowing with riches. Shaking off their fatigue, Ayasi declares they need to keep moving and find what the key unlocks. The god, now fully recovered, eagerly sprints ahead, completely focused on finding the treasure. Ayasi tries to call her back, exasperated by the god's reckless and unchanging greed. Ignoring all warnings, Alayar charges down a dark corridor, heedless of any danger. Her haste proves foolish, as a cage trap springs from the floor, ensnaring the careless god. Ayasi and Fuku sprint towards the trapped god, their concern quickly turning to shock. A sinister buzzing sound stops them in their tracks as a dark presence emerges from the shadows. The source of the noise reveals itself to be a terrifying swarm of monstrous insects. The corridor erupts with a horde of giant glowing-eyed bugs charging straight for them. Fuku and Ayasi are frozen in sheer horror by the grotesque sight. Snapping out of it, Ayasi grabs both her companions and attempts to drag them to safety. As the swarm closes in, a panicked Alayar clamps down on Fuku's head in desperation. The trio makes a frantic escape down the hallway, the monstrous insects hot on their heels. Back in the present, Fuku finishes recounting their narrow escape, with Alayar now sitting on his shoulders. Alayar clings to Fuku like a good luck charm, while Ayasi nervously agrees it's their only hope. Still carrying the god, Fuku seizes the moment to ask why dungeons are so perilous. Alayar seems flattered by his question, finding his reliance on her quite satisfying. Her ego swells as she prepares to deliver a divine lecture on the nature of their world. Hopping down, she excitedly gathers her companions, eager to share her godly wisdom. She reveals that dungeons are simply a system of trials and blessings, leaving Ayasi utterly baffled. Alayar begins her story with a vision of ancient humans toiling in a desolate, unforgiving land. Those who persevered through the struggle were rewarded with divine blessings, their faith strengthened. She describes a forgotten era where gods and mortals lived in a delicate balance of fear and reverence. But as humanity's faith faded, the gods created dungeons to reignite their belief. Fuku and Ayasi are left speechless, finally understanding the true purpose of their adventures. Alayar dismisses any sense of tragedy, a sly grin on her face. She confesses her deepest fear was simply being forgotten by humanity. Her honest confession touches Fuku, who looks at her with deep sympathy. Lightening the mood, she playfully rallies her companions to focus on the treasure hunt. The reality of their situation sinks in as they realize the dungeon is growing darker and more menacing. Fuku nervously laughs, joking that the eerie atmosphere reminds him of a haunted house. A sudden spooky occurrence sends a jolt of fear through the group, who cling to Fuku. On high alert, they cautiously scan their surroundings, unnerved by the strange event. Ayasi playfully mocks Fuku, pointing out that he was terrified by a simple pile of rubble. A pale-faced Alayar tries to deny the possibility of ghosts, but her own terror is hilariously obvious. A ghostly voice echoes through the corridor, begging for salvation as spectral hands crawl along the walls. Alayar's terror spikes, and she nearly strangles Fuku in a panicked frenzy. Ayasi snaps them out of it, pointing out the voice is human and could be another trapped adventurer. Their attention is drawn to a glowing birdcage slowly lowering from the darkness above. Inside, they find the very same thugs who attacked them, now pleading for their lives. The trio gazes up in astonishment at a massive chamber filled with countless hanging cages. Ayasi offers to help, but the thug reveals they were imprisoned not by a trap, but by the dungeon's god. Fuku is shocked by the news, while a smug Alayar looks on, unsurprised by a fellow god's handiwork. The thug mentions his comrade went for the key, showing off a familiar-looking tattoo on his arm. Fuku's eyes widen in realization as he remembers seeing that exact tattoo on the thugs they left behind. Fuku pieces it all together. The thugs they fought were just trying to help their captured comrades. He urgently asks about their condition, but the caged adventurer can only suggest they escape together to find out. Suddenly, a voice from above declares that their escape would be a problem as the cage is hoisted higher. The dungeon's god, Via, makes her grand entrance, calling the imprisoned humans her cherished followers. Alayar recognizes the new god and calls out her name, getting Via's immediate attention. Via sneers at Alayar, mocking her as a washed-up god with no manners for trespassing in her domain. Undeterred, Alayar demands to know why Via has resorted to locking up humans. Via coldly states that her actions have nothing to do with the noble concept of trials. She scoffs at the idea of trials, proclaiming that raw, unwavering faith is all a god truly needs. Via reveals her twisted method. She torments some adventurers while letting others escape to spread terror, and in turn, faith in her name. Fuku and Ayasi listen in horror as Via explains she traps treasure hunters to farm their faith. The dungeon god smirks, smugly calling her cruel method an efficient system. Alayar trembles with rage, her fists clenched at the blatant corruption of a god's duty. She erupts in fury, arguing that faith must be earned through trials, not extorted through fear. Via dismisses her as naive, finding it far easier to simply force belief from captured mortals. The cruel god points accusingly, admitting she is merely using the humans for her own gain. Fuku is stunned into silence by the casual admission of her monstrous philosophy. Via justifies her actions, showing a vision of her preying on unsuspecting adventurers. She then twists the knife, blaming Alayar's compassionate nature for her fall from grace. Via gestures to her massive prison, declaring that efficiency is all that matters for a modern god. Via condescendingly lectures Alayar from above, dismissing her as a relic with outdated ideals. Her cruel words trigger a painful memory for Fuku, recalling a time he was mercilessly bullied. The dungeon god continues her verbal assault, mocking Alayar's inability to generate faith. This mirrors Fuku's past, where his tormentors berated him for not being able to earn his keep. Via lands her final blow, declaring that a useless god like Alir has no value. The vision ends with a young, beaten Fuku, reinforcing the feeling of worthlessness. Snapping back to the present, Ayasi looks on with concern as Fuku stands silently. Fuku takes a determined step forward, admitting he doesn't understand the complexities of faith. He walks past a stunned Alir, acknowledging that she might not be the most capable god. His unexpected declaration leaves even the smug dungeon god momentarily confused. Fuku erupts with a powerful blue aura, stepping in front of Alir to shield her. With a furious roar, he fiercely declares that no one will harm his goddess. Alir stares in utter shock, stunned by her followers' sudden and powerful transformation. Via smirks condescendingly, finally understanding the source of Fuku's newfound strength. She reminds them of their disadvantage, summoning a monstrous guardian to enforce her rule. A colossal robotic minotaur activates, its mechanical eyes glowing with menacing power. Via mockingly decides to give Alir's weak follower a special trial of her own design. The dungeon god unleashes her ultimate test, pitting Fuku against the fearsome guardian. The mechanical beast lets out a deafening roar, preparing to annihilate the lone challenger. Ayasi finds herself trapped behind an energy barrier, forced to watch the deadly evaluation begin. A system window reveals the guardian's identity, a modified minotaur with an S-level danger rating. Ayasi watches in despair, knowing that even a full A-rank team would be no match for such a beast. Fuku stands his ground, a lone warrior facing a towering mechanical monstrosity. The minotaur prepares to strike, with Ayasi concluding that Fuku's luck has finally run out. Fuku's eyes blaze with resolve, understanding that he must find a way to overcome the impossible odds. The mechanical beast lets out a furious bellow as it swings its massive axe down on him. Guided by Alir's voice, Fuku narrowly dodges the devastating blow that shatters the ground. Via raises an eyebrow, intrigued by the unexpected teamwork between the goddess and her follower. Fuku reappears unscathed, having sidestepped the attack with impossible speed. A tactical display analyzes Fuku, unable to detect any skills and labeling him a mysterious energy entity. The Minotaur's tactical system flashes a red alert, reclassifying Fuku as an unpredictable threat. The Guardian unleashes a massive wide-range energy attack to obliterate the boy. Following Alir's guidance, Fuku perfectly dodges every strike, moving left and right with blinding speed. He narrowly sidesteps another blow, his body coursing with a powerful blue aura. Fuku realizes his survival depends entirely on his uncanny ability to guess the right move. A confident grin spreads across his face as he masters dodging the two-option attacks. Via suddenly appears before him, her curiosity piqued by his impossible performance. She lands softly, critiquing his weak gear and obvious lack of combat training. The dungeon god continues her assessment, noting he's never faced a truly life-threatening situation. Her eyes widen in realization as she finally understands the secret behind his mysterious power. Via thoughtfully observes the pair, questioning if Fuku's survival is merely luck. A sinister smile spreads across her face as she deduces his power isn't skill, but pure instinct. She decides to test her theory, joining the Minotaur in a pincer attack from above. Fuku is overwhelmed by the two-pronged assault, sent flying by the devastating impact. He lands hard, realizing he can't possibly evade simultaneous attacks from two powerful foes. A golden bracelet on his hip suddenly glows, reacting to the immense pressure. Deciding to end the game, Via gathers her power for a final, efficient strike. Watching from the sidelines, Ayasi has a sudden, shocking epiphany about Fuku's true nature. The Minotaur towers over the boy, raising its glowing axe for the finishing blow. It unleashes a furious whirlwind of energy, a crimson storm aimed directly at the trapped Fuku. Fuku braces himself, anticipating the next wave of the crimson energy storm. A terrified Alir desperately shouts a warning for him to flee. Via smirks, playfully guiding the attack's path with a single finger. The energy storm morphs into a barrage of spinning, homing projectiles. The deadly discs converge on Fuku, leaving him no room to escape. He watches in disbelief as the attack's trajectory shifts, making his dodges useless. With no other choice, Fuku prepares to block the incoming assault head-on. Ayasi suddenly intervenes, materializing a defensive shield to block the Minotaur's strike. The immense force of the blow shatters her barrier, sending her flying backward. Fuku catches the injured Ayasi, horrified to see her hurt while protecting him. Fuku stares in horror at Ayasi's grievous injury, a consequence of her selfless intervention. He's overcome with despair, realizing his inability to protect his companion from harm. Via gloats from above, revealing that Fuku's luck was useless against an opponent she specifically chose. As Ayasi apologizes for her weakness, Fuku is racked with guilt and rage over her sacrifice. Alair explains Via's true identity as the god of the path, a being who controls destiny itself. The dungeon god smugly confirms her power, boasting that her guided attacks are impossible to evade. She prepares another homing projectile, channeling her absolute power into a simple, rusty blade. The injured Ayasi insists they must retreat, recognizing they are completely outmatched by Via's abilities. Fuku's despair hardens into a cold, silent resolve, his glowing eyes fixed on his enemy. He gently entrusts Ayasi to Alair's care, preparing to face the impossible challenge alone. Alair watches in alarm as a powerful blue energy crackles around Fuku. He takes a determined step forward, declaring his intention to fight. Fuku calmly faces the towering Minotaur, reassuring his concerned goddess. He reveals his trump card, explaining he has already summoned reinforcements. A powerful aura erupts from Fuku as his eyes glow with newfound determination. He stands his ground, a lone warrior of blue light against a charging crimson beast. The Minotaur unleashes its devastating whirlwind of energy blades, aiming to overwhelm him. Fuku calmly stares down the impossibly large attack descending upon him. Suddenly, a squad of small shielded creatures materializes, forming a defensive line to protect him. The Minotaur pauses in confusion, baffled by the unexpected arrival of Fuku's allies. A system window identifies his reinforcements as low-level shield goblins, whose only ability is to charge. Alair recognizes the glowing item in his hand as the legendary tribal chief's emblem. Using the emblem's power, Fuku summons an entire army of various goblin types to surround him. Via remains unimpressed, correctly guessing his trump card is the ability to command weak monsters. He then summons a squad of C-rank assassin goblins, specialized in surprise attacks. The assassins leap from the shadows, launching a coordinated strike against the dungeon god. With a flick of her power, Via effortlessly disintegrates the goblin assassins in midair. Fuku and Alair can only stare in disbelief as their elite units are wiped out instantly. The Minotaur reveals a hidden device, a small cylinder that begins to glow with power. The Guardian acknowledges Fuku's strategy of using numbers, just as another creature is summoned from above. The Minotaur reveals its trump card is not another monster, but a piece of advanced military hardware. It equips a massive, multi-barreled cannon that crackles with destructive red energy. Fuku's goblin army can only tremble in fear before such overwhelming firepower. The Guardian loads a devastating cluster bomb, preparing to annihilate Fuku's forces in a single shot. A torrent of energy erupts from the cannon, instantly vaporizing the goblin front line. Fuku watches helplessly as his last remaining goblin defender is neutralized by the blast. He stands frozen in shock, spattered with the energy residue of his fallen army. With the battle decided, the final goblin shield clatters to the floor, symbolizing Fuku's defeat. Intrigued by his spirit, Via descends to the battlefield to make him a proposition. She extends a hand with a smug grin, inviting the defeated boy to join her side. Via casually explains her offer is a simple case of headhunting for his unique talent. She clarifies her terms. He will abandon his goddess and offer his faith to her instead. The dungeon god boasts she can utilize his abilities far more efficiently than Alair ever could. She presents an ultimatum, offering to spare Alair and Ayasi if he agrees to serve her. With a menacing clench of her fist, she warns that refusal means the end for all of them. Fuku turns his back on Via, his attention solely on his companions across the desolate chamber. He looks down at Alair, who is still protecting the grievously wounded Ayasi. Alair gazes up at him, a flicker of worry in her eyes as she senses his resolve. He expresses his profound gratitude to Alair for saving him from a life of despair. Blue energy crackles around his fist as he reveals he's finally growing accustomed to his power. He turns to his goddess, asking if his luck is truly enough to defeat their foe. Alair is momentarily stunned by his question as he expresses his deep debt to her. With his body crackling with power, he asks if the gift she bestowed upon him can overcome this impossible challenge. A flustered but resolute Alair confidently confirms that his power is more than enough. She unleashes her own aura, guaranteeing the absolute power of luck and urging him to fight without hesitation. Bolstered by her words, Fuku's resolve solidifies as he prepares to charge. Watching from above, a displeased Via declares that their time for talk has officially ended. The Minotaur takes aim with its devastating cannon, preparing to execute Via's command. Undeterred by the massive weapon, Fuku charges down the long hall, a lone streak of blue light. He leaps forward, concentrating all his newfound energy into a single, decisive strike. The Minotaur's cannon sputters and shorts out, crackling with Fuku's blue energy instead of firing. Via is stunned as she realizes her guardian's ultimate weapon has been inexplicably jammed. Unfazed, she switches tactics, activating the missile launchers mounted on the Minotaur's back. Fuku looks up in alarm as he spots the new, even deadlier threat preparing to launch. He suddenly stops his charge, standing amidst the fallen goblins as if struck by an idea. A surviving goblin clings to his leg, offering him its shield in a final act of loyalty. Realizing this is his last chance, Fuku prepares to stake everything on a single desperate move. Via commands the Minotaur to guide the missile barrage, ensuring Fuku has no escape. A storm of guided missiles rains down from above, zeroing in on his location. With a surge of power, Fuku hurls the goblin shield directly into the path of the incoming attack. Fuku imbues the goblin shield with his power, activating its shield charge ability. Via is stunned by this unexpected move, unable to comprehend his strategy. While the missiles track the shield, Fuku launches himself like a human missile straight toward the dungeon god. The goblin shield takes the full impact of the missile storm, erupting in a massive explosion below. Using the blast as cover, Fuku closes the distance in an instant and grabs a shocked Via. The dungeon god realizes with dawning horror his plan to take them both out with the remaining missiles. With the projectiles now locked onto them, Fuku calmly embraces his final desperate bet on luck. Aliar watches in terror as a colossal explosion consumes both Fuku and the dungeon god. The blast wave violently throws Fuku and Via in opposite directions, caught in the fiery aftermath. Enraged and caught off guard, Via grits her teeth as she's engulfed by the intense explosion. Via recalls her original purpose, a benevolent god who guided the lost on their journeys. She scoffs at her former self, seeing her role as nothing more than a simple guide for travelers. A humble shrine once stood as a testament to her forgotten divinity in a bygone era. But with the rise of machines, her purpose faded and her shrines were left to decay. She became an invisible spirit, desperate not to be forgotten in a world that had moved on. The prevalence of modern technology confirmed her greatest fear. She was now obsolete. This painful realization forged a new, ruthless ambition to become the god of efficiency. In the present, the defeated dungeon god lies broken amidst the rubble of her own ambition. As the smoke clears, a lone figure slowly rises from the wreckage of the explosion. Fuku stands victorious over the neutralized Minotaur, his desperate gamble having paid off. Fuku stumbles forward, his body finally giving out after the intense battle. Aliar rushes to his side, catching him just as he's about to collapse. She holds him close, her voice a mix of relief and disbelief at his reckless actions. Overcome with emotion, she buries her face in his shoulder, chiding him for his insane gamble. Fuku manages a weary but triumphant smile, basking in the hard-won victory. His expression softens, content that his goddess is safe and sound. He returns her embrace with a light-hearted laugh as she continues to fuss over his self-destructive plan. He apologetically explains to his companions that it was the only strategy he could devise. Ayasi, now recovered, praises his success and suggests they return to the guild after a brief rest. Meanwhile, the defeated dungeon god begins to stir amidst the ruins of her chamber. With a final surge of malice, the defeated god's hand twitches, crackling with dark energy. Aliar cries out in alarm as a commotion erupts from the other side of the chamber. The other trapped adventurers have cornered one of Via's subordinates, hungry for vengeance. Their leader holds his blade to the subordinate's throat, blaming her for their long ordeal. He furiously declares that her presence is the sole reason for his group's suffering. The subordinate cries out in pain, struggling desperately against his tightening grip. Just as the man prepares to deliver the final blow, Fuku intervenes, stopping the blade. The enraged adventurer demands to know why Fuku is protecting one of their captors. He argues that after weeks of imprisonment, he deserves his revenge, but Fuku remains unmoved. Fuku's body crackles with blue energy as he silently refuses to let the cycle of violence continue. The adventurer leader recoils, stunned and angered by Fuku's unexpected defense of their enemy. Via watches the scene unfold, a single tear tracing a path through the grime on her face. A memory surfaces of a gentler time, when she guided a lost child safely through a forest. She recalls the child's innocent gratitude, a simple flower offered in thanks for her protection. A vision of her former self appears, a benevolent guide who found joy in helping others. The memory shows the child waving goodbye, a testament to the trust she once inspired in mortals. She remembers the simple pleasure of that small gift, a stark contrast to her current ambition. In the present, the broken god struggles with her words, her past and present selves colliding. Fuku awkwardly tries to diffuse the tension, admitting he's not suited for these kinds of confrontations. The adventurer leader appeals to his comrades, urging them to stand down now that the danger has passed. The adventurer leader glares at Fuku, while the subordinate tearfully begins to apologize for her actions. Overcome with guilt, she breaks down completely, her apology choked with genuine remorse. She drops to her knees, bowing and begging for forgiveness from the adventurers she helped imprison. Fuku, flustered and out of his element, awkwardly tries to calm her down, assuring her it's okay. His attempt to console her only makes her cry harder, much to his utter confusion. Later, back at the guild, Alir animatedly recounts the awkward encounter to a smugly amused Ayasi. The scene shifts to the impressive modern skyscraper that serves as the Adventurers Guild headquarters. Inside, party poppers explode with confetti, kicking off a massive celebration. The guild hall is packed with adventurers celebrating the conquest of the great Iron Labyrinth and Fuku's rank up. Fuku, the man of the hour, stands awkwardly in a party hat and sash, uncomfortably accepting their praise. Alir playfully chides a distracted Fuku, reminding him that he's the guest of honor. He sheepishly admits this is the first time anyone outside his family has ever celebrated his achievements. Determined to make it memorable, Ayasi suddenly appears with a massive celebratory cake. Fuku expresses concern for her injuries, but she insists she's fine while balancing the huge dessert. Her bravado is short-lived as a sharp pain from her wound causes her to falter. The enormous cake teeters precariously, threatening to topple over. Ayasi watches in horror as the cake begins its disastrous descent. Fuku springs into action, diving to catch Ayasi as she stumbles. The cake flies through the air, heading straight for an unsuspecting Alir. With impossible speed, Alir effortlessly catches the massive cake, saving the party from ruin. Fuku holds Ayasi steady, gently chiding her for not being careful with her injuries. Flustered by his sudden closeness, a blushing Ayasi can only nod in agreement. With the party chaos settled, the trio moves to a quieter spot to examine their loot. Ayasi proudly presents their reward, a legendary sword named Ariadne, a rare drop from the dungeon. Alir smugly boasts about her own reward, much to Fuku's exasperation at her competitive spirit. As Ayasi fumes at the comparison, a man in a suit observes their squabble with a dismissive air. Suddenly, a mysterious horned girl latches onto Fuku, startling him with her abrupt appearance. At the same time, the man in the suit introduces himself as Tomaga, the director of the guild. Ayasi reacts instantly, snapping into a deep bow and loudly praising the director. The entire hall follows her example, erupting in a synchronized chorus of praise for Director Tomaga. Ignoring the fawning crowd, Director Tomaga approaches a startled Fuku, praising his adventurous spirit. He enthusiastically grabs Fuku's hands, commending him for conquering the dungeon and saving the hostages. Fuku, completely flustered, finally asks why such an important figure is paying him any attention. The director reveals he's here to personally deliver Fuku's new guild card. Tomaga formally presents the card to the still bewildered adventurer. The new card gleams, displaying Fuku's name and a less-than-flattering photo. Fuku stares at the card in disbelief, muttering about his official E-rank status. The director's high-tech visor scans the name Kamisaki Fukutaro, his interest clearly piqued. Tomaga clarifies that while the card is still E-rank, he believes Fuku's true skill is closer to C-rank. With a wave, Tomaga departs, telling Fuku he looks forward to his future achievements. Fuku bows deeply, stammering his thanks as the director departs. Suddenly, a brawny adventurer grabs Fuku, marveling at his one-day dungeon conquest. His burly friends swarm in, crediting Fuku's success to the blessing of a luck god. Meanwhile, Ayasi loudly praises Alir's divine grace for saving her from harm. She then whispers to a food-focused Alir, seeing a prime opportunity to recruit followers. Alir seizes the moment, vowing to save everyone with her power of luck, with a hint of uncertainty. The entire guild hall erupts in a toast, cheering for both the goddess of luck and Fuku. Fuku can only watch from the side, exasperated as Alir gets swept up in the moment. The brawny adventurer approaches Fuku again, wanting to ask a favor based on his legendary luck. He asks Fuku if he would be willing to use that luck to help someone in need. The brawny adventurer promises a simple task with a great reward, his grip on Fuku tightening. Alir jumps in with a devilish grin, claiming this favor will earn him points with his goddess. Wasting no time, the adventurer declares they must leave immediately and begins to pull Fuku along. Ayasi watches the bizarre scene unfold, wondering where on earth they're taking her party leader. Elsewhere, in a dark and ominous place, a massive wolf-like creature contemplates its next move. Its sharp teeth glisten as it considers that one of its underlings has already interfered in the situation. This beast is revealed to be a powerful-looking boss figure who now considers getting personally involved. Meanwhile, Alir soaks up the cheers from the guild members, reveling in her newfound popularity. A blushing Alir internally thanks Fuku, realizing her current fame is all because of him. She strikes a flirtatious pose, playfully considering the idea of making Fuku her personal servant as a reward. Alir turns around to find Fuku has vanished, leaving only an empty space where he once stood. She erupts in fury when Ayasi casually explains that Fuku was dragged off by the brawny adventurers. The favor turns out to be a trip to a luxurious mansion with a pristine swimming pool. An overjoyed elderly woman thanks Fuku for finding an item she's been searching for over 2 centuries. The adventurers cheer ecstatically, amazed that Fuku's luck helped him locate it in a mere 5 minutes. As a token of gratitude, the woman offers a hefty reward to a very flustered Fuku. Overwhelmed, Fuku attempts to politely decline the generous payment for his help. The brawny adventurer insists he accept, explaining it's proper etiquette to take such a gift. Trapped between the enthusiastic adventurers, Fuku looks completely lost as they pressure him. Elsewhere, someone is already scheming to take a cut of Fuku's newfound earnings. The adventurers present a stunned Fuku with his share of the reward, a massive stack of cash. Fuku trembles, trying to refuse the overwhelming amount of money being pushed into his hands. The brawny adventurer, Kawada, reminds him that a reward was part of their deal. His companions, all followers of the god of money, insist that accepting gratitude is only natural. Fuku glances nervously at the trio, still questioning the ethics of accepting such an easy payout. He reflects on his past, only ever earning money through difficult official guild quests. The group proudly reveals their devotion to the god of money, basking in a golden aura of wealth. The brawny adventurer eagerly shakes Fuku's hand, already planning their next lucrative venture together. Meanwhile, Ayasi questions a pouting Alir's decision to keep Fuku in the dark about something. It's revealed Fuku's luck has already secured a massive contract for someone else, who sees him as a valuable puppy-like asset. A businessman celebrates a massive stock market win, crediting Fuku's presence for his newfound fortune. A popular streamer also rejoices, his video views skyrocketing thanks to a collaboration with the god of luck, Fuku. The brawny adventurers laugh heartily, overwhelmed by the sheer amount of money they've won. Kawada hands Fuku yet another stack of cash, calling it his daily share plus a generous bonus. As they depart, the adventurers offer Fuku a ride for their next venture, leaving him stunned by this new way of winning. Hiding in the bushes, a furious Alir and a curious Ayasi watch the exchange unfold. Alir seethes with jealousy, silently insisting that Fuku is her servant and hers alone. Fuku, now warming up to the idea, suggests a casino trip for their next training session. Their celebration is interrupted by a small, tearful girl holding one of their flyers. The little girl desperately explains that her friend, Mary-chan, has been missing for 3 days. The tearful girl clarifies that her missing friend, Mary-chan, is actually her pet kitty. Kawada's sympathy vanishes, replaced by a greedy grin as he asks the child for payment. The little girl looks downcast, admitting she doesn't have any money to offer for their services. Fuku tries to accept the quest for free, but Kawada firmly refuses to work without compensation. Kawada explains to a confused Fuku that his luck is a valuable asset that can't be given away. Ignoring the brawny adventurer, the girl desperately grabs Fuku's arm, pleading for his help. Kawada callously shoves the small child away from Fuku, sending her stumbling backward. As the girl falls to the ground, Fuku rushes to her side while Kawada scolds her for being spoiled. The adventurer coldly dismisses her, stating that without money they have no business with her. One of the companions grabs a horrified Fuku, trying to drag him away to their next venture. Fuku struggles as his captor tries to drag him off to celebrate their earnings. Watching from afar, Alir erupts in rage at their cruelty towards the little girl. Alir is startled as Ayasi suddenly stands up, her expression grim. Fuku looks back in confusion as Ayasi steps out from her hiding spot. Ayasi calmly blocks the adventurer's path, positioning herself between them and the crying child. Kawada recognizes her as Fuku's companion and greets her with a sycophantic smile. Without a word, Ayasi sends the brawny adventurer flying with a single powerful punch. Kawada lands face first in the dirt, completely knocked out as his companions and Fuku stare in disbelief. Ayasi calmly approaches the fallen child, offering a comforting hand and revealing she witnessed the entire event. She pulls the little girl into a protective embrace and furiously scolds the adventurers for their shameful greed. Fuku stares in shock as Ayasi's sudden appearance completely changes the situation. One of the remaining adventurers seethes with rage, furious at Ayasi's interference. The duo arrogantly challenges Ayasi, questioning her authority to defy the followers of the god of money. Fuku's expression darkens as he silently reflects on the adventurer's greedy actions. Kawada, back on his feet, confronts Fuku and defends their philosophy of profiting from his luck. Turning his back on them, Fuku announces his decision to return all the money they've made. The adventurers are completely baffled by Fuku's sudden change of allegiance. He forcefully shoves the stacks of cash back into Kawada's chest, rejecting their ill-gotten gains. Fuku declares with newfound resolve that he will not compromise his principles for money. Kawada is left stunned and speechless, clutching the rejected money in disbelief. Fuku rushes over to Ayasi and the girl, apologizing for the trouble he caused. Ayasi turns with a confident smile, revealing she was never worried because she has complete faith in him. Her declaration of trust hits Fuku like an arrow, leaving him completely flustered. Now a united front, Fuku kneels to ask the little girl for clues about her missing cat, Mary-chan. A furious Kawada roars from behind, refusing to let his golden goose just walk away. The adventurers stand their ground, declaring that followers of the god of money don't take insults lying down. One of the lackeys seethes, angry that the servant of a second-rate goddess cost them their cash cow. He threatens to report them to their god, Mercator, causing Fuku and Ayasi to gasp in alarm. Suddenly, a massive, ominous shadow looms over the adventurer, questioning his threat with a chilling presence. The god of money himself, a giant, blinged-out cat named Mercator, makes a flashy and unexpected appearance. The giant cat confirms he is Mercator, leaving everyone stunned by his immense and divine presence. Kawada immediately shifts to flattery, trying to turn his god against Fuku and Ayasi for interfering. He eagerly asks Mercator to punish the duo for disrupting their profitable ventures. To everyone's shock, Mercator agrees someone is being rude before delivering a powerful blow to Kawada. The adventurer is sent flying through the air, crashing hard into the dirt after being struck by his own god. Kawada's remaining followers look on in absolute terror at their fallen and bruised leader. The two adventurers wisely choose to flee, screaming apologies as Mercator scoffs at their cowardice. The little girl, however, runs forward and happily embraces the giant cat, mistaking him for her lost pet. Fuku and Ayasi are left speechless, realizing the god of money is the missing Mary-chan. Mercator then turns his intimidating gaze on Fuku and Ayasi, accusing their followers of causing trouble. Ayasi tries to apologize, but Mercator waves it off, saying his followers deserved their punishment. The god of money then praises their character, admitting he's genuinely impressed by their actions. He glances back at a fuming Alair, deciding to leave to avoid a goddess's wrath and promising a future meeting. Fuku and Ayasi are left completely baffled by his cryptic promise to see them again soon. Mercator clarifies that he's not just leaving, but has received an urgent summons from Tomaga. The scene abruptly shifts to a large briefing room where a mysterious figure addresses the assembled adventurers. Fuku, Ayasi, and their goddess Alea are formally identified as a single team for this new mission. Mercator and his bruised followers, including Kawada, are also present and identified as their own team. The man is revealed as Tomaga, the guild's Tokyo branch head, who tasks them with conquering a dungeon. He presents a holographic map of the target, a complex dungeon ominously named the Concrete Jungle. Tomaga presents the mission details, revealing the Concrete Jungle is a high-difficulty dungeon with a grim 10% survival rate. He initially states its size is a massive 11 square kilometers, only to correct himself with a nervous chuckle. The guildmaster reveals the dungeon has tripled in size to 34 square kilometers and is still growing at an alarming rate. He gravely warns that if they fail, the entire country of Japan will be swallowed by the dungeon within 3 months. The scene shifts to the dungeon's entrance, a strange fusion of overgrown nature and a modern high-tech gate. A new, cheerful goddess appears before them, enthusiastically thanking the adventurers for accepting the dangerous quest. She is introduced as Argel, the goddess of fertility, and the administrative deity of the very dungeon they're meant to conquer. As Tomaga departs, Alea questions Argel about the true severity of the threat, noting how pale the guildmaster looked. Argel sheepishly begins her explanation, recalling how she decided to create a new dungeon by simply watering a tiny sapling. She admits with a blush that her little tree grew much faster than expected, accidentally creating the world-ending threat they now face. A furious Alea grabs Argel by the collar, enraged that the goddess's mistake created this crisis. Fuku calmly intervenes, trying to de-escalate the situation as Mercator advises against pointless blame. Mercator offers some cool philosophical advice, but Alea sharply points out he's a cat, not a man. The god of money summarizes that their goal is the original tree, but expresses doubt about the guild's plan. Ayasi outlines the strategy, showing a map where multiple teams will attack the dungeon from 10 different points simultaneously. She reveals their team will attack from the south, a route with no supply points, making it a desperate race against time. Mercator questions why Alea is joining the dangerous mission, and she admits she would rather be anywhere else. A flashback shows that Alea is forced to stay near Fuku because of a debt she owes from a lost bet. Mercator and Argel wish the trio good luck as they bravely set off to conquer the concrete jungle. The god of money watches them depart with a pensive and slightly worried look on his face. Mercator reflects on the chaotic nature of the goddesses, each one a walking scandal. The scene transitions to the desolate, overgrown ruins inside the concrete jungle. Fuku activates his divine sword, which erupts with a brilliant purple light to guide their way. A powerful beam of energy shoots from the blade, carving a path through the destroyed cityscape. The guiding light effortlessly slices through massive roots and debris, clearing the way forward. Ayasi is stunned by the sword's immense power, feeling confident it will guide them safely. The party advances through the dense dungeon, finding the terrain difficult but strangely devoid of monsters. Fuku abruptly stops, his instincts flaring as he senses an unseen presence lurking nearby. As Ayasi tries to dismiss his fears, a sinister vine silently snatches the goddess Alea from behind. A second vine then grabs Ayasi, but Fuku turns back with a relieved smile, convinced it was all in his head. Just as he dismisses his worries, a third vine snakes around Fuku's ankle, yanking him backward. The true culprit is revealed, a monstrous tree spirit with glowing red eyes which has captured the entire party. A system window identifies the creature as a tree spirit, a normally docile beast that has become a C-rank threat. Alea dangles helplessly from a vine, lamenting her constant misfortune. Ayasi, despite being captured herself, bravely aims her electric gun to free the goddess. Her attack backfires spectacularly, sending a powerful shock right back through the vine and into her. The electricity arcs through the interconnected vines, zapping Fuku as well. The failed rescue attempt leaves Fuku and Ayasi stunned and temporarily incapacitated on the ground. Ayasi sheepishly apologizes for her weapon being ineffective on the monster, but painfully effective on her friends. Fuku recovers, defiantly facing the tree spirit and channeling his own power into his divine sword. Fuku surges with power, channeling immense energy into a decisive sword strike. He unleashes a devastating beam that pierces the tree spirit's core, causing it to cry out in agony. The monster is left shattered, a testament to Fuku's luck combined with his sword's unerring precision. Ayasi is stunned by their victory, admitting their risky all-or-nothing strategy somehow worked. The sword's true power is revealed, a divine weapon with guaranteed accuracy and a 100% critical hit rate. As the party recovers, Ayasi questions the monster's aggression and spots a curious item among the remains. She discovers a glowing power nut, a rare item that leaves the entire party speechless. A system window confirms its effect, a permanent 1-point increase to the user's strength. Fuku celebrates his find, but Alea quickly dismisses his excitement, telling him the item is useless to him. She reminds him that his great reversal skill would invert the nut's effect, making him weaker instead of stronger. Fuku selflessly offers the valuable power nut to a stunned Ayasi. She tries to refuse the expensive item, but he insists it would be wasted on him. He smiles warmly, explaining it's a thank you for all her help. Touched by his words, Ayasi accepts the gift from her important companion. An impatient Alea urges them to hurry up and get moving, already striding ahead. Ayasi clutches the nut, deeply moved by Fuku's kindness before consuming it. The scene shifts to a different group of adventurers fleeing in terror from a monstrous spider. 2 female adventurers watch the attack unfold on a screen, looking bored and disgusted. One of them coldly dismisses the idea of helping, seeing no reason to risk their own lives. Her companion agrees, callously suggesting they can just loot the other party's items if they all die. A third adventurer seethes as her companions mock her desire to help the other party. They continue to taunt her for being weak, pushing her to a breaking point of pure fury. Meanwhile, Ayasi reflects on her own perceived weakness, believing she's the one who always needs help. A flashback confirms this, showing Fuku pulling her from danger and facing down a massive beast. She remembers all the times he supported her, realizing she's the one who's truly been saved. This realization leaves her feeling completely useless compared to Fuku's constant selflessness. Fuku cheerfully calls out, snapping her from her thoughts and urging her to hurry. While she runs to catch up, a hidden group of armored men watches, pleased with their unfolding scheme. Their leader reveals their goal, to steal the credit for the mission and gain the god of money's favor. And their path to riches involves taking advantage of Fuku's unsuspecting and good-natured party. A rival adventurer laughs cruelly, content to let Fuku's party do all the hard work. She reveals a sinister, pulsating artifact, the key to their treacherous plan.